Oh, wait, hang on. I didn't check to see if Michelle was on.
I'm here. I just couldn't get unmuted.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. So, roll call. Sorry, my computer's not cooperating. Anderson?
Here.
Delgado?
Here.
Wong?
Here.
Miller?
Present.
Larson?
Present.
Levy?
Here.
Jacobs?
She's having problems getting on.
Okay. Otherwise, everybody else is here virtually. I see our student has joined us as well.
Okay.
And the
Perfect.
superintendent is on, as well as our cabinet and some of the guests that will be speaking tonight too.
Yes. Okay. May I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Miller, second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to approve the agenda. Any questions or discussions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved, which brings us to the Pledge of Allegiance. So for the Pledge of Allegiance today, how does this work now, Michelle?
I believe Amy was going to help us out with her children tonight.
Perfect. Awesome.
Ready to go.
Awesome. I thought that the kiddos doing the Pledge of Allegiance for us was the best part of the meeting, and so Michelle and Dean and Sue, they were able to come up with a way for that to still be the best part of the meeting, even though we're not here in person. All right, so let's go ahead.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Sure can.
Yep.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you
Was
hear me?
everyone able to see the screen?
We saw the screen, but we didn't hear anything. And then you stopped
Oh.
presenting.
My apologies. Let me try that again.
Can anyone hear me? It's Stephanie.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we
Awesome.
can hear you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
We will try this again.
There's still no sound.
Oh, I can hear, but I don't know why you all can't hear. My apologies.
It was very nice to see them, and we could recite with them. At least I did.
Thank you.
Amy, do you want to try one more time, and we'll just unmute and recite it?
Sure.
Please, thank you. I muted myself. I'm sorry, and I forgot to mute myself.
Here we go.
All right, thank you. This is Sean and Madison Levy, and Sean's at Fruzen, Amy, and
Madison's at Todd.
Okay, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. All right, brings us to announcements. And Spencer, is that you tonight?
Yes, it is.
All right, go ahead, sir.
All right. Good evening. If you have not signed your student or students up for summer school yet, it is not too late. Summer school will be held virtually this summer. However, there is still room and there is still time to sign your children up. You can go on the district website at beloitschools.net and click on the link on the right-hand side of the page next to the pictures, which will take you directly to the summer school website. If you need further assistance, please feel free to call our summer school help desk at 361-4081. Is your little one finishing elementary school and moving to the intermediate schools this fall? Be sure to visit our school district homepage for a tour of our intermediate schools. You and your children can take a tour of Aldridge, Cunningham, Fruzen, and McNeil virtually to begin preparing for the next exciting step to his or her education. Grab-and-go meals have resumed following the holiday on Monday, Memorial Day, at all elementary schools and the high school from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. As always, take a look at our student highlights on our district website as well. We are currently showcasing students' artwork. You will find other important information such as communications and updates on coronavirus. Finally, thank you to teachers, seniors being offered scholarships and featured in the Beloit Daily News. There are many educational videos and other resources on our website for all of our families and students. Sorry, there, I lost my place. All right, I'm gonna just restart here. You can find other information, or important information, such as communications and updates on coronavirus, family thank yous to teachers, seniors being featured in, are offered scholarships and featured in the Beloit Daily News. There are many educational videos and other resources on our website for all of our families and students, as well as information about resources our families need, that may need during the health crisis. If you need help explaining coronavirus to your children or help with how your children is coping during the pandemic, there are resources there as well. If you are unable to access this, these with ease if you are unable to access these easily, these easy to find resources. Please contact your school principal or secretary and they will help or be happy to help you. Congratulations to senior Jared Bell, who is committed to playing basketball this fall at Rockford University. He is just one of the many seniors who have received offers for sports or scholarship awards this year. Others like Cam Boyd will play basketball this fall at Cerro Castro Community College in Richfield, California. Aziz Gani was recruited by Beloit College to play basketball in the fall as well. Audrey McMallowell was the first BMHS student recipient of the $10,000 scholarship from the Herb Cole Foundation for demonstrating academic potential, outstanding leadership, citizenship, community service, integrity, and other special talent. She plans to attend the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the fall. She received several other scholarships as well. These are just a few of our outstanding seniors, and we wanted to make sure to congratulate all of them as they gear up to prepare for their virtual graduation on Saturday, June 6th at 10 a.m. Links for the viewing will be available on the district homepage as well as the high school homepage of the website. Please also watch our virtual retirement ceremony for all of our district retirees this year. While we all wish we could be together to celebrate as we normally do, we want to wish you all the best in your retirement and the new adventures you will find waiting for you. Additionally, we were unable to celebrate with all of our staff who have faithfully remained with our district for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 45, and yes, or 40, and yes, even 45 years. They too will be honored with a virtual celebration and will be receiving their gifts. Our 25-year honorees are normally welcomed into the Quarter Century Club with a special dinner and a ceremony, which has been postponed from April to October 4th, 2020. Wish you all the best, and thank you for your dedication and service over all of the years you have been a Beloit Proud employee. One other note for the Quarter Century Club, they will be doing their annual Flapjack fundraiser again this fall in November, provided things will return to a more normal or more regular setting. The board meeting agendas and minutes are available via visiting board docs and following our postings at beloitschools.net. Once you are there, click on our district tab and then click on Board of Education. On the left side, please click on board docs. You may also click on View Meetings on the line of the day, or on the line of the day of the meeting to watch our live broadcast. This concludes our main announcements with many things to watch for and items to check out on our district website or download on our new district app today.
Thank you. That brings us to Schools of Recognition, Hackett and Robinson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Monica Christopa reporting virtually. And today I'm very happy, along with everyone in the school district of Beloit, to share some news about Hackett and Robinson Elementary Schools. The Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, DPI, awarded Hackett and Robinson schools with the distinction of Beating the Odds schools. And what does that mean to us? Well, schools that are noted and awarded with Beating the Odds are in the top 25% of high poverty schools in the state and have above average achievement in reading and mathematics compared to schools from similar sized districts, schools, grade configurations, and poverty levels. Let me repeat that again for everyone. These two schools have above average achievement in reading and mathematics when compared to schools of similar sized districts. Can we open up our mics and just everyone give them a round of applause?
Well done.
Thank you, thank you. Additionally, Superintendent Green has asked the principals from these two schools to join us tonight and talk a little bit about how this was accomplished. So Ryan McReynolds, principal from Hackett Elementary, and Belinda McCarthy from Robinson Elementary are going to share their comments. And Ryan, I'll ask you to go first.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for giving me the honor of letting me speak tonight. We gladly accept this recognition. It's a total team effort, and I can't stress the word team enough. That's what we have built over at Hackett between our students, our families, our staff. It's about doing what's best for kids day in and day out. And at Hackett, we pride ourselves on going above and beyond. We have each other's back, and we've all bought into the plan and the process that we're following. And recognition like this just validates that what we're doing is working. So we're not going to stop now. We're going to keep moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Belinda, can you join us and share some thoughts with everyone now?
Absolutely. I am the lucky one to recently join Robinson Elementary this year, and they are a staff of pure perseverance. They are always positive, and they work with all of their students and families to keep everyone engaged and enthused about learning and teaching. So I am the lucky one that I am part of that Robinson family, and I am thrilled to be able to continue leading them with putting safe, welcome learning environments for students and families in place and continuing to see students grow.
Thank you, Belinda.
Thanks for inviting me. This was wonderful.
All right, thank you very much. One more round of applause for Hackett and Robinson, please. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great job.
All right, so this brings us to public comments. Michelle, do we have any emails?
I do not have any emails that have been received for public comment.
All right, thank you. So that will bring us to the superintendent's report on school closures.
Thank you, Kyle. I have a number of items to share tonight under the umbrella of school closure. We're going to start with the fact that the district completed and shared the results of a family survey on distance learning. Tonight, Peg Mellencamp, Executive Director of School Leadership and Equity, will share the results of the district staff and teachers surveys completed recently. So, Peg.
Good evening. Get my screen shared here with you. As Sue said, we sent out our staff, our family survey, and during that same window, we shared out a staff survey. And as a cabinet, we wanted to gather a snapshot midway through our distance learning. So this data was gathered a couple weeks ago, and we wanted to gather feedback in the areas of communication, instruction, and progress monitoring. And together as a team, we drafted the questions and analyzed the responses and wanted to share out that information with you. As we go through this presentation, you're going to see responses from 2 different surveys, as well as some information that I'll reshare from this family survey that kind of overlaps or mirrors some of the questions that we shared with staff. The first survey that we sent out was to all district staff, all staffing groups, around 730 staff members. And we had 449 staff respond to that survey and about a 64% response rate. So really, really good participation in both of these surveys. And as we looked at the results, we decided that we did want to share out a second survey that targeted real specifically the instructional staff only, when we wanted to gather a little bit more information or more specific information regarding student engagement and communication. So you'll see responses for that survey as well, and 270 of 440 staff responded with a 57% response rate. Typically anything over 30-40% is a really good response rate, and we appreciate our staff providing this feedback for us. These first two questions are directly from the first initial survey, and it's specific to district feedback or district communication during the school closure. And you can see the topics that we were in communication about. It was really helpful to have the whole staff perspective on this response because as you remember, the situation changed rapidly. We had new information daily with multiple plans were communicated out of a very short period of time. And our district goal is to keep staff informed of the governor's orders, safety measures, and school closure measures. And according to the response, that we did a pretty good job of doing that, with 83% agreeing that they received useful communication from the district. The second question was again about effective and frequent communication, but from their building administrators. And again, it was helpful to have the entire staff perspective regarding communication at the building level. Building specific communications, helping each other stay connected during uncertain times is very helpful, and it's really important for staff and families to hear information from their building leaders. The second chart is from the family survey. So we asked families the same question of, have you received adequate communication from your school? And you'll see that in both of these surveys, both staff and families agree that their building administrators or their teachers are really communicating out well with staff and families. Our next question deals with our district learning framework, and we asked teachers under the district learning framework, is the amount of and level of work that you assign your students appropriate? And you see their responses here. And again, we combine the amount of work that they're assigning students and the level of work they're assigning their students. And overall, they agree that both of those are appropriate. These next slides, again, are directly from our family survey. And these questions, if you remember when Missy shared them out, we had separate questions for the amount of work and then separate questions for the level of work. And in both cases, these pretty closely mirror each other, saying that the amount and level of work is appropriate for our students. In our second survey that we sent out specifically to instructional staff, again, that's teaching staff, pupil services, this was just the breakdown, pretty even responses from all three of our grade level groups. So in both the first and second survey, we asked about the number of students participating in distance learning. The first survey is up in the upper left-hand corner, and the second survey, we wanted to narrow it down a little bit more so you could specifically see those breakdowns. And in the second survey, you'll notice that 7.8% is the less than 25% of my students are participating in distance learning. And also information that Missy had shared out during the student survey or the family survey, our buildings have put great effort into engaging our students. We've been able to identify who these students are and put measures in place to connect with them. They have the tiered system where they're reaching out to students and families, phone calls home, letters home. And once that process was initiated, we've heard feedback from teachers that more students have been engaging in distance learning as a result of these extra measures that have been put in place. And I think it's also important to remember what families are going through during this time, that we have many families where both parents or the parents are working at home, and in some cases we have students who are working as well. The top left question is from our family survey. And just as a reminder, when we asked families, has your child or teen been participating in distance learning, you'll see that the vast majority said that yes, their children were participating in distance learning in some format. This next question is about teacher communication with families. Again, the top left one is from the all staff survey, and the bottom right is specific to just our instructional staff. And you'll see that a large number of our staff have direct communication on a weekly basis with their family, whereas that back and forth interaction. Again, our buildings have been putting great efforts into newsletters, calls home, emails, utilizing social media, pushing out Blackboard messages, class dojos, and other modes of connecting with families. Our final question asks our staff about their ability to adequately monitor student progress. And again, the top left is from the entire staff survey, and the bottom right is specific to just the instructional staff. And when we asked it the second time, we really wanted to mirror the family question, which you're seeing now in the upper left-hand corner. And you'll see that it very closely mirrors what our families are saying, and as well as what our staff are saying about their ability to monitor student work. And our distance learning framework provided guidance for monitoring student engagement and participation in learning opportunities throughout this process. And in addition, we've shared grading guidance for both terms 3 and terms 4. And we worked with teachers, principals, and school leadership teams to develop our term 4 guidance to ensure that we're clearly communicating information to staff and families. And all term 4 grades will have a COVID-19 coding in Skyward, which is something that is being done consistently statewide. In addition, we've added specific comments to our grade books in the template for the report cards. So, for example, a teacher will be able to select one of the following pre-populated comments if they're scoring a student as limited progress. They can select limited progress due to COVID-19, student has partially participated in distance learning, or due to COVID-19, student has not participated in distance learning. So we will
Ms.
have
Melling. Ms.
Yes.
Mellencamp, this is Amy Levy. I have a question.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding this correctly, that bottom circle that's mostly blue, similar to the top one, and as an instructor, I am able to monitor my students' learning. So a quarter of our teachers who responded saying that they're not able to monitor a student's learning. Is there something I'm missing? How would that be possible?
And this is where, so the types of questions that we asked were not open-ended. They were pre-selected just because we wanted to get that brief snapshot again. So some of this may be due to students who hadn't been able to log in under the distance learning framework at that point in time. I don't have the specific feedback on this. This is something that we are gathering more information about at the building levels. And again, it's as we shift our instruction and practice of, it looks so different than what our regular progress monitoring. So I'm thinking of, as an elementary teacher, I'm able to sit down with my students when I'm face-to-face with them and do those benchmark assessments where I'm really getting that close monitoring of students. So some of it is just that shift in under our distance learning in our current situation. It feels a lot different than how I would normally monitor student progress.
Okay, but you have kind of the behind the scenes information per building, so that's something that they can follow up on.
These were given out at the district level, and I believe Sue's going to be talking a little bit after this portion is done about some future plans that we have to gather more information.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then just to follow up on a few instructional next steps. So we have a lot of next steps in a lot of different areas that we're looking at, but I just wanted to share just a brief overview of some of the work that teams will be working on this summer and into the fall. And we'll be developing those instructional plans, which include, we'll be working with teams of teachers and administrators and coaches to identify those key standards that we'll be working on next year across grade levels and content areas, and including those discussions of how will we assess our students in the fall, no matter what type of instruction, whether it's face-to-face or some type of blended model, under whatever scenario we're operating, how can we assess student progress and learning and where they are currently. We'll also be determining what our district-wide learning management systems are that we'll be using. More than likely, it'll be one for the littles and one for the older students. Quite possibly, it could be one uniform one, such as Google Classroom. But again, that will be determined by our teachers and our administrative team. And we'll be providing ongoing professional development on all of these above topics throughout the summer and into the fall. And that would include some supports for families and students as we move forward as well.
Thank you, Peg, for sharing that information with everyone tonight. Planning is also underway with input from our teachers to do an additional survey that will go out to all families on the completion of our distance learning plan and the end of the school year. Families will have the opportunity to address the specifics of their child's or their teen's programming and learning during the school closure specific to each student's level, elementary, intermediate, and high school level. The results of this survey will be done by school specifically, with results being analyzed by each building. This information will inform our preparation for the next school year and for any possible future school closures. Next, I'd like to share that planning is being completed to have our seniors, our 3rd grade and 8th grade students moving to the next level school come to the buildings to retrieve their belongings. This will be done in accordance with the Department of Public Instruction and the State Health Department, with all safety practices upheld, as school buildings, grounds, and events are still under closure through June 30th. I would also like to share that as we prepare for the next school year, there are several possible scenarios being presented by DPI on what the school year could entail, ranging from full reopening of our buildings for instruction, a continuance of distance learning, or a hybrid of these. We will have discussions with teachers in the BEA to get their input into each scenario, depending on the decisions that will be made for the fall. We will hear from teachers what needs are for our students, our families, and for teachers and staff for each of these possible scenarios. We will discuss what they learned from this historic measure to close schools and how we can all be better prepared should we continue a school closure or move, or have a situation where we would move again suddenly into a school closure. These meetings are set for June 8th, 9th, and 10th. And finally, I'd like to share something that is related to school closure. The school district decided today that we will be paying the Beloit Memorial Spring Athletic coaches 40%, the head coaches, of their coaching contract, and assistant spring coaches 25% of their spring contract. In March, when schools closed due to COVID-19, any spring coaches were provided a prorated pay for their sport if they had started the season. The compensation already paid will be part of this payment to coaches and assistant coaches of 40% and 25%. Thank you for letting me share my report.
All right, thank you, Sue. That brings us to our student board member report. So this is Cassandra Duran Vasquez's last student board member report to us. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So for my last report, I'll just be reporting about how students have now completely been immersing themselves into the online learning. And although at the beginning it was kind of confusing for some of us, we've all been getting our work done and trying our best to make the most out of these last few weeks. Earlier in May, the seniors were able to pick up their caps and gowns and had signs posted in front of their yards by staff and teachers, which just made us not be so sad about the whole situation that's going on, but just be happy that our teachers are still remembering us and that we're still being congratulated for all of our efforts these past 4 years. We also had some teachers sending out video messages to students to just thank them for being great students and having good efforts during school. And just it was really nice to see the teachers just care about us and remember us and have it be better during these harder times. Our seniors decided that it would be a really good idea to make a senior video. So our secretary, Fatima Morales, she came together and created a Google Photos account in which seniors were able to download and share photos and videos of our senior year. And she made a big video compilation of all these photos and videos and posted on YouTube, in which our seniors could reminisce on all the good memories that we had this past year. And it was just really we were all really happy to see that even though our year was cut short and even though we may not have had some events happen and had some things be canceled that we might have been looking forward to, it was just really exciting and really heartwarming to be able to see all of our memories as we've grown together these past 4 years. And so, as this being my last report, I just want to say thank you so much to all of the board members for being so welcoming to me during all of these meetings and just being so welcoming as a student to be on the board. I learned a lot more, not just about the members of the board, but just about all of our entire community and being able to see different perspectives that a student may not be able to see when they're in school. And this position was such a unique experience, and I'm just really glad that I was able to take it on and take on this responsibility that I might have been a little scared to take on at first, but seeing how everybody was just so kind and how everybody had such great ideas that were brought onto the board, and it was just a really amazing experience, and I really don't think that I would have been able to get this experience anywhere else. And I'm just really happy that I'm able to take this information that I've learned now into the future and just reminisce on this experience that I've had. So I just really want to say thank you to everyone on the board that was just so kind to me, and I'm just really happy that I was able to have this experience with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. I remember you actually from Mrs. Shippey's class at Morgan Elementary with my daughter, Megan. So I'm happy I've got to spend this time with you. What are your plans for the fall?
My plans for the fall are going to Beloit College and majoring in education so that I'm able to come back to Beloit and be able to become a teacher all over again to impact the students of the future.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
You're on the board with us. We wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
All right, so this is going to bring us to our committee reports. So we'll, first up is planning and budget with John Wong.
Okay, let me get to my notes here. And before I do, I'd like to say congratulations, Cassandra, on graduation, and that you'll be participating in soon here, and also all the work that you did on the board. I think that it was neat to see you come in, be prepared, and represent the student body, and I think that's a wonderful opportunity for kids your age to be able to do that, but also have the experience of being on the board, because it is a lot different than probably many people realize. So congratulations again. Let's see, the Planning and Budget Committee. We met Tuesday, May 12th at 5:15. Spencer Anderson, Megan Miller, and myself were present. And we had a few things. One, I'm going to probably talk a little bit more in depth on this because I think it is important to understand this, and I thought it was very good regarding program, curriculum, and materials. Anthony Bosco presented, and he talked about every January they go through this process in preparation for the next year with schedules with the PK and also the intermediate schools. It was very interesting to hear, how they've done a very deep dive on this, and it talks about, changing up the scheduling itself. And I'm going to actually read it here, and it said basically at the district level, the goal is to bring consistency in instructional time, work on daily science and social study instructions, common prep by grade level, collaboration during the school year, utilization of specialists across the district. Additionally, at the elementary level, keeping literacy and math blocks intact, not splitting around specialist classes such as music or Phi Ed was important, as well as consistent beginning of the day procedures like morning meetings, breakfast in the classroom, etc. The more we heard about this, there was a few principals that actually were able to talk about the process that they went through. And I think it's very important for everybody to know that it was a bottoms up approach whereby staff was very involved in this process at all levels. And that was very pleasing to hear, because I think it's extremely important to have staff to have input about the process of the scheduling, because we have heard from in the past perhaps some concerns about how scheduling was handled. So as kudos to all the principals and all the hard work they've put in. The next area was the indicating the translation of policy translation that we had talked about previously regarding the policies into Spanish. We had a discussion of this. The former representative for Wendy Sanchez for the ad hoc committee is no longer on the board, so Megan Miller stepped up to the plate and is going to be taking on that role. The goal is to get everything translated into Spanish, all the policies. Right now we have a large bulk of them done at this time, the main ones, but it's a matter of getting them all done. And the hope is that we'll have them done by the fall. We're continuing to look at internal staff to be able to assist us with that, to make sure we get this done in a timely fashion. And I know Megan was going to work with the ad hoc committee that we had begun to work with to kind of communicate things to them as well. So we'll get more on that in the near future here. Facilities. Sean Winters presented RFPs. He said that there's several that were released regarding swing sets and sound systems and all of that. Main reason he was coming to us at our committee meeting was in regards to issues related to the pool. The swimming pool has a filtration system that is very dated. Even though the pool is relatively new, he provided us some data that apparently this is something over the last 10 years plus that other districts throughout the state have found that the filtration system isn't adequate. So we're looking at getting a replacement for that. This will save us time and money in the long run, which will come up tonight. And we're hoping to see the work begin by July 1st. One thing that we talked about was where the money is coming from, because it is a sum of $100,000+, and the money will come out of the next year's budget. So that's why we're delaying this until August. Let's see, I think that's what he said here. Yeah, the next school year. So next board meeting that we'll have, our next committee meeting will be on Tuesday, June 2nd at 5:15. That ends my minutes.
All right, thank you, John. Whoops, which brings us to Oversight and Finance. Amy?
Okay, I just want to echo what other board members said. Cassandra, that was a beautiful report, and we wish you all the very best on your future endeavors. Thank you so much. The Oversight and Finance Committee met on Tuesday, May 12th, 2020. Board member Levy called the meeting to order at 6:42 p.m. Roll call showed that all members were present virtually. Board member Levy appointed Ms. Delgado as the vice chair of the Oversight and Finance Committee and reviewed the purpose of the Oversight and Finance Committee. The committee received 3 reports. Ms. Armstrong presented an informational report to update the committee on student device distribution. 2 highlights from that report included, number 1, the pickup times have continued as more students and families have come forward indicating that they were unable to pick up devices during the original week of device dissemination. And the second highlight was to note that there have been special situations where devices have been delivered. So that was definitely good to hear, that we are removing barriers to our students receiving their devices in order to participate in distance learning. The second report, Ms. Mellencamp presented an informational report to update the committee on distance learning. 3 highlights from that report include, number 1, the addition of the student tech desk has been very helpful in providing support for students and families. Secondly, Google Classroom added a feature in June of 2019 that allows for Classroom to talk to Skyward, which will be helpful when it's time for teachers to transfer grades. This is a lengthy process that requires planning and work on the back end of the program at the district level. It's a project that the district will be working on this summer and will roll out once it's completed and professional development is available to support in its implementation. The final highlight from Ms. Mellencamp's report was that the district is sharing weekly professional learning opportunities offered by CISA 2 and other professional organizations. Finally, the committee received a financial update from Ms. LaPointe with assistance from Ms. Armstrong. Ms. LaPointe reviewed the financial reports for March 2020 and indicated that there were no significant changes and line items are trending similar to last year. For a few future agenda items, the committee is looking forward to receiving additional information on Title I and carryover CLC funds. The next meeting date for the Oversight and Finance Committee is Tuesday, June 9th. The time will be released as we get closer to that date, and the meeting was adjourned at 7:26 p.m.
Thank you very much, Amy. Before we go on to the next one, John, you had a question?
Yes, I did. Actually, it was for Sue in regards to her report, which I appreciate. Question I had regarding that, you talked about the additional surveys coming out and obviously to get feedback from the staff regarding distance learning. I'm wondering if you've given any thought to having a student advisory committee of any form, or asking students from throughout the district to determine what is the best methods that they've discovered and kind of getting a sampling of students as far as the best experiences or some of the best experiences that they've had during their prep time, because obviously they're the ones receiving it and learning it, and you might get some constructive feedback that way. So.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think that's a great idea that we should look for student input on how the program went this year in much more detail at each school level and specific to the schools. And I would agree the same would be true for our parent input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. It is, when the reports are given, it is okay to ask questions. And so perhaps if you do have a question, if you put it in the comments, say like, I have a question, I can see that and I can call on you, because like this, it's easy to see who's on mic, but if somebody's presenting, then I can't see who may want to speak or ask a question. But if you just type in the chat box, then I can make sure I call on you. All right, so that brings us to policy and personnel, which is Stephanie.
Thanks, Kyle. And I'd like to echo my fellow board members' congratulations to Cassandra. What an exciting time it's going to be for you in your life. And I wish you all the best. And I think you did an amazing job on the school board. Thank you so much for all the time and effort. The Policy and Personnel Committee met on Tuesday, May 12th. Members present were myself, Amy Levy, and John Wong. The meeting was called to order at 6:04. We did not have any reports. However, We started out with approval of the minutes from April 7th and the 28th. I unfortunately did not prepare John and Amy, which I apologize for in advance of the minutes so that they could read through them. So those were postponed until today. The next item on the agenda was appointment of a vice chair, and John Wong is now the vice chair of the Policy and Personnel Committee. I reviewed the purpose of the Policy and Personnel Committee, which I believe needs to be done annually. So that was read through. We also moved to recommend to the full Board of Education authorizing Michael Ulrich, I'm not sure, forgive me on the pronunciation, attorney at law, and Michael Holland, attorney at law, as the board hearing officer, board expulsion officer for next year. And we also moved to recommend approval of the personnel employment recs to the full board. The meeting was adjourned at 6:42 p.m. and we will be meeting on June 9th at a time to be determined.
All right, thank you very much, Stephanie. That brings us to our legislative update, and this is a new report that I have added to our business meeting agenda because there's so much going on with legislation because due to the pandemic. And so our legislative liaison is Megan. So every month she'll kind of prepare a report summarizing big happenings and things that maybe we need to be aware about as a board, as well as a community that could impact our school district. So go ahead, Megan.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So first, I just want to give everybody a quick update that I invited our representatives and state senators to a special legislative kind of FAQ session that's going to be on Tuesday, June 23rd at 5 p.m. So far, I've heard back positively from Senator Ringhand and then Representative Spreitzer and Loudenbeck, and have yet to hear back from State Senator Nass. So just wanted to throw that out there. And I'm going to quick try and share my screen so that you guys can see the update here. Sorry, I just need a second. All right, can everybody see that?
Sure can.
Awesome. Okay, so a couple of local announcements. At the county level, Rock County has issued a phased reopening plan that's hyperlinked here. So anybody watching at home can access this report on Board Docs and click here like I'm about to. So if you click on there, you can see, sorry, there we go. You can see what their phased reopening plan is, and we are currently in phase 1. So I just wanted to make that available to everybody. Are there any questions on the county plan? Oops. Sorry. Okay. So moving on, the city of Beloit then shortly after passed its own resolution, which is very similar to the county, but it's a little bit stricter in some areas. And I'll click to that FAQ in a moment. That was passed Monday, May 18th, and it was done because Beloit makes up, or it did at this time, made up 65% of the positive cases in Rock County. So both of the recommendations ask that people continue to follow the CDC practices of avoiding close contact with other people, continue to wear masks, wash hands frequently. I'm just going to click really fast here so everybody can see what the FAQ looks like in case you have specific questions. I do believe that the city guidelines are enforceable with like a citation if it's a really egregious offense. So you might want to take a look at these, and our school district will continue to abide by the orders in place. So does anybody have questions on any of the local stuff? Okie dokie. So I also wanted to make available for the public, and I'll keep these here for each report. As we go through the legislation in progress, sometimes the legislation is still in committee. So I linked the ways that you can find the people who are on each committee for education, both in the Assembly and the Senate, in case you care really strongly about any of these issues. You can contact those people. And I also put our contact information for all of our representatives here. Now, what's peculiar about this time is that there was a, usually there's something called Senate Joint Resolution 1, and that just like sets the legislative calendar for the year. However, due to COVID, if you look up each of these pieces of legislation, it sort of looks like it says it's failed due to Senate Joint Resolution 1 because they couldn't meet to finalize a lot of these things. But because of the special circumstances, the plan is that our state assembly and Senate is going to try and call something called an extraordinary session. It has yet to be scheduled, and the goal is for them to schedule this before the end of the year to complete all of these pieces of legislation that I'm going to highlight here that haven't been completed yet. So if you see something on here and it says like ready for Senate vote, if you were to look it up online using this link that I provided at the way top, it would say that it failed due to Senate Resolution 1, but that doesn't mean it's not coming back. Okay. So for example, everybody's probably familiar with this one, the Holocaust curriculum mandate. It says on like the Senate like website that it's failed, but it hasn't actually failed. It's going to come back at some point during this extraordinary session that they're going to call. So it is like ready for a Senate vote, and it passed unanimously through committee, so it's likely to pass. The tobacco age one as well has not been passed yet. That raises the minimum legal age under state law to buy like tobacco products from 18 to 21. That's heading to the Senate. The cursive writing mandate is in the same boat. It's ready for a vote. If you care one way or the other strongly about that, you can contact either Senator Ringhand or Senator Nass. Scrolling down. There is a 3-year online early learning program for low-income children that's been proposed and has actually passed already, which is personally I'm really excited about. And you can click all the hyperlinks here to look at the actual laws that have passed. The tax change is also ready for a Senate vote. These are the same ones that we looked at in February, by the way. The only one that's still in committee is, let me scroll back up here really quick, the funding for bilingual and bicultural programs. So this is something that really could benefit our district. And if you're interested, you should definitely contact our representatives and get more information about it and find out if they're planning on voting for it, because it's something that Beloit could benefit from. It would be additional funding for bicultural and bilingual programs. Another one that is really relevant to our school district is the, I'm going to sneak down here to the open enrollment, Senate Bill 789. This would expand open enrollment, part-time open enrollment to charter and voucher like school choice programs that would allow kids who are in a voucher school or in a charter school to take a certain number of classes in a public school. And so that would mean that like voucher school students or charter school students could come and take like AP classes, for example, at Beloit Memorial would be an example of that. So if you feel strongly one way or the other, you could contact representatives about Senate Bill 789, because that is one of the ones that is slated for a Senate vote whenever they're able to come back into session. A few really exciting pieces here were enacted into law. They expanded the amount of career clusters available for our youth apprenticeship program, which we have a fantastic youth apprenticeship program in our high school. So that was passed. There's a revenue adjustment that corrects how school revenue works. That was passed. And they passed some changes to seclusion and physical restraint restrictions for the special education program. And I just want to clarify one more thing, and then I'll pause. The plan for this whole situation is for them to come back into the extraordinary session. However, when they do, and if they do, it's not guaranteed that every single one of these bills will come forward. They might need to kind of triage it according to importance. So it's pretty nebulous what's going to happen at this point, but I will definitely keep you posted. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question, but this is great. Thank you for the way you laid it out with the links and the contact information. You made it very easy to reach out and to get more information. I appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure. it's hard to understand a lot of this stuff sometimes. So I just want to make sure that our board and our community can make sure we can advocate for things that are important for our district.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was absolutely wonderful. And I think that this is a great way to help, kind of like what Amy had said, and you did too. It's a great way to kind of help talk about things that are happening at the state level and local level that affect our school district, and help us all become better advocates for our students. All right, so this brings us to the DPI waiver public hearing approval due to COVID-19. Following the public hearing, the board will take action on the waiver. So it brings us to a presentation of the DPI waiver of school district requirements pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 118.38 Parent 1 and Parent 1M.
Tonight, I'm presenting the request to DPI for a waiver due to COVID-19 and school closure.
I'm sorry, Sue, can I interrupt for 1 second? Sure. I apologize. So for the, just reminded, there is a public hearing associated with this. Mm-hmm. You can email Michelle Shope, so people can get dialed in or send comments while you're presenting. You can email mshope@scb.k12.wi.us. Or you can also join the Google Hangout meeting by calling 1-408-596-5684 with the PIN number 804-135-870, followed by the pound sign. And that information is under the public content on board docs. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sue, I apologize.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. The Department of Public Instruction this year provided this pathway to avoid any penalties to districts due to school closures during COVID-19. Most districts have done this throughout the state. I'm personally not aware of any districts that have not or will not complete the waiver process. Our request for waiver is in 3 areas. The first area for waiver is instructional hours. The School District of Beloit Distance Learning Plan sufficiently covers the required instructional hours for the period of school closure, along with the hours in the 2019-2020 school year prior to the school closure. The waiver protects any students who would have been impacted by COVID-19 in the area of instructional hours. The second area for waiver is the Educator Effectiveness. This is the DPI required system of both teacher evaluation and teacher support for ongoing professional growth. As the buildings closed in March, some portions of the EE process were not completed. It could not be completed during the school closure, most specifically the observations of instruction. We followed the guidelines provided by DPI, directing our principals and teachers to work cooperatively on the EE process to complete the 2019-2020 school year. Our teachers are still completing several components of this process, including work on their personal summaries, providing evidence of their work on their professional practice goal, and their school and student learning objectives. And they're still adding artifacts to their personal platforms in the system. The teachers and the principals will work together to discuss progress towards their growth targets, continue any coaching conversations, and discuss any continuous improvements moving toward next school year. The waiver to DPI allows our district to finalize this process with some of the components of the EE process not being fully completed for all staff, such as the observations, due to COVID-19. And finally, our district will request a waiver for the civics exam. We have several students currently in classes that prepare students for the civics exam. These students will indeed take the exam. We value the instruction that is being provided and the opportunity for students to still participate in the learning and to take the exam. The waiver will protect any of our students who cannot fully participate in this learning or those who may not have success on the exam due to COVID-19. Are there questions that have come in?
Thank you, Sue. Is there any public comments, Michelle, at this time?
I'm refreshing my email just to make sure that I don't miss any. And at this point in time, I do not see any. I will double check and see if anybody else has joined the meeting. I do not see any public people that have joined the meeting that were not already here in the meeting that are participating for other reasons. So I do not see any specific public quote unquote hand raising or asking of questions.
So then I'm going to go ahead and say that the public hearing portion is closed then, having not received any emails or having anybody join us. So that means that we are at the point of approving the waiver.
Oh, I do have a clarifying question.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
So if I understand the report correctly, as best as possible, educator effectiveness cycles for the 19-20 school year will be complete. My question is, assuming we are open in the fall, do you foresee this having any impact on observation cycles for the 2021 school year?
I think we'll take the same precautions that they're taking right now. They would look at, the if the school is open fully and all components can be addressed. The hardest part to be completed is when we are closed, in that the teachers can't have their observations where the principal comes in for approximately a 30-minute time, does an observation, and then meets with the teacher and provides discussion and feedback. And so that just can't be completed during school closure. So we're going to hope that we're all back in our classrooms in the fall, and that way the EE process would be able to be fully implemented.
Right. So more specifically, let's say we are open. Are there plans to make sure the observations happen sooner rather than later without harming the integrity of the process with rushing them?
I would think that this is a waiver for what's happening this school year. Amy, I'm making a note that would be a good point to add to any plans for reentry into the fall.
Yep, and we could sure address that, Amy, at that time.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from the board regarding the waiver? Okay. And this, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I was going to move approval of the school board resolution 2021.2002 for the waiver of certain school board or school district requirements pursuant to Wisconsin state statutes 118.38 parent 1 and 1M.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the school board resolution 20-21.02 for the waiver of certain school board or school district requirements pursuant to Wisconsin state statute 118.38 parent 1 and parent 1M. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing no one unmuting and hearing no one, all in favor, please say aye.
Point of order. It's a resolution. I have to do a roll call.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
Long.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Levy.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Delgado.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, so the resolution is passed. Thank you, Sue and the cabinet and all of your teams for the work put in on the resolution and all of the hard work with the distance learning.
Okay, thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome. Okay, so this brings us to discussion information items. And the first one is our updated board web page. I think that's going to be Monica.
There we go. Can everyone see the website? Or at least,
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so I thought I would start just on the district's landing page so that for those individuals who are viewing too, they know exactly where to find the board website. So you would click on our district and go to the Board of Education. So we've made a few enhancements, but I want to point out first that always we have a translate button at the top. You can select that drop-down bar and there's any number of languages our website can be translated into. However, when we upload certain documents, those are not translated, and we make an effort to translate all of those into Spanish. So we have a welcome letter from Kyle, and we have translated that into Spanish as well. So that's a nice introduction letter that he did for the landing page on your site. Board docs, you go to that to get all your information about board meetings and all of that. And I should mention that Michelle is responsible for all of your website updates. I stepped in just to give her a little help in organizing the site based on all of your feedback, which was very, very helpful. So we have our homepage, board docs, view board meetings online. And again, the link is right at the top. If someone wants to join our meetings via YouTube, that link is there and active right at the top, as well as for committee meetings. All board members are listed on our website, and thank you all for your fabulous photos. And it has your contact information for individuals to get a hold of you. I also broke out board committees. So this really talks about the committees on our board, and then who is the chair and vice chair, if appropriate. And again, that's just so the public can know who the members are and what role they play on those committees. Under meeting date and times, listed all the board meetings, our regular and board business meetings, and when you meet, and then at what time. I also listed out the committee meetings on what days they typically occur. We know those times can change, so we ask that they check board docs the day of all committee meetings to get those specific times. The other information that falls down on this channel bar is really managed and run by Michelle, and she is going to be doing some updates to consolidate those, and again, looking for everything to be very user-friendly. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
Monica, this is John. Excellent job on the website. I mean, everything's crystal clear. It's easy to navigate around in. Everything you've done with the website, all the marketing and everything else, fantastic job. Well done. You almost feel like a part of our household with the calls coming in. It seems like every other day. So as well as every other house in the district. So thanks again. Great job.
Thank you. And that's all based on a lot of your feedback from the board and the cabinet working together. So it's been a joint effort. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Monica? All right, thank you very much, Monica. It looks great, and I think has made it a little bit easier for people to access the information and find board docs and how to see more what's going on at the board and committee level. I appreciate
That's
that.
good. Thank you. And thank you to Michelle too.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle, also. Okay, that's going to bring us to the interim superintendent search candidate rubric, and this was provided. Oh, hang on one second. Maybe I have to move my tab back in. Okay, so hang on, I'm sorry, I have to catch up. This rubric was provided by. I'm gonna go to present. Okay. So this applicant rubric was provided by Dan from WASB as a tool to use as we review the interim superintendent candidates. So he said that you're able to use this. All 7 of us do not have to use this rubric. The 7 of us don't have to do it the same way, as long as that each one of us is consistent in the way that we review the applications and come up with our top choices. So most of them are just like a yes or no, but then when you get down to like 10 through 12. I wonder if these are in a different order. So some of them you could do on a rubric 1 through 4. Let's see. Sorry, I was going off the notes that he gave me.
Lines 10 through 13.
Okay, 10 through 13. So 10, 11, and 12 could be done on a 1 through 4 scale, but then it says -, 0, and plus. So this is a tool for you to use. We don't have, I just wanted to make it available to you as you're looking at the candidates. Okay. Any questions about that at all? If I'm right tab. It's difficult when you're presenting. Okay. Future board meeting dates, Michelle. That's early. Okay.
I moved that general section up, and then I didn't realize it till after it was posted, and I thought, well, that's really early on the agenda. I'll have to move it down later to the, next time to the end.
Yeah, because with the public hearing, the format of this agenda got kind of wonky. So the Planning and Budget Committee will be meeting Tuesday, June 2nd. This will have special board meetings Wednesday, July 3rd and Thursday, July 4th for interim superintendent interviews, which are closed session. And I'll say right now that we will not have YouTube. We're not going to broadcast that meeting opening and going into closed session because it's only closed session, and we won't be taking any action in open session. And we do have to compensate the people who, Dean, who helps us with everything with the broadcasting. Oversight and Finance will be meeting Tuesday, June 9th with a time to be determined. Our regular board meeting will be on Tuesday, June 9th, also to be determined. Policy and Personnel Committee will meet Tuesday, June 9th. Time to be determined. We'll have a special board meeting Monday, June 15th for our final round of interim superintendent interviews. We'll have a special policy and personnel committee meeting on June 23rd, our business meeting on June 23rd at 7 p.m. And we also will have a special board meeting on Tuesday, June 2nd, adding back up at the top for some expulsions that we have to hear before their 30-day timeline is up. So that we have several meetings coming up in the next several weeks. Okay. Brings us to number 8, the consent agenda. Would anyone like anything removed from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing no one unmuting and not hearing any comments, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second, this is Maria.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any question or discussions? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is approved. So this brings us to our business agenda and action items. The first one is a request to waive policy 345.6, Rule 1, specific graduation requirements.
Thank you, Kyle. And again, this portion of a waiver is done only at the district level regarding board policy requirements for graduation. And I've asked Peg Mellencamp to provide this presentation for you.
All right, good evening. This is a similar process as far as how we determined items that we were going to be requesting for waiver that are under district discretion rather than something that we need to submit to the Department of Public Instruction. So we've been working, the cabinet team has been working very closely with Beloit Memorial High School and Beloit Learning Academy. Their teams have been tracking their senior students and their progress toward meeting graduation requirements, not only at the state level, but our district graduation requirements as well. And we have identified 3 specific areas under our current graduation requirements that we have a few students who might be impacted due to COVID-19 and the challenge that it presents. Again, just as the students, Sue referred to the students in the requirements for the civics requirement. Students are enrolled in the programs. This does not mean that instruction has stopped. Students are still, we see the value in the education process and students completing these courses, but we don't want some of our district's requirements to hinder their ability to graduate. The 3 specific areas are the half credit requirement for American democracy, the half credit requirement of financial literacy, and then our overall 10 elective course credits. The majority of students are very close to that 10 credit. We're not, none of the students would be meeting the entire 10 elective course requirements. But again, it would allow seniors for this year only who are impacted by COVID-19 to graduate and move forward with their plans. Any questions about that?
I have a question. Without revealing anything about any specific students or student groups, can you help me understand how the requirements could not be made with distance learning and credit recovery? Kind of what the situations are surrounding the need for the waiver?
Sure. So as students were enrolled, signed up for their courses for the entire school year, as we shifted from our face-to-face learning into our distance learning requirement, I'll kind of do the recommended time allotment for students at the high school level is right around that 3.5 hours. And again, we have many of our students who have siblings at home, some who are working, who have families who are working, who for one reason or other, due to the challenges of COVID-19, aren't able to complete every single credit requirement. They may be prioritizing their core credit DPI graduation requirements rather than, having to make some of those decisions based on the number of courses that they're enrolled in.
Peggy, it's Stephanie. Do you have how many students are we speaking about?
Well, just like the DPI requirement, it's the blanket waiver that we're applying for, but students are still participating in these courses. They are still completing the coursework. They will still receive their grades on their report card under our current grading structure that we have for term 4. It's just in the event when we get to that decision about the graduation and meeting requirements, we're not going to be penalizing any student who wasn't able to meet those in those 3 areas that I just identified. We're providing that protective layer that they would still be able to graduate and move on time without having to go into credit recovery and have to potentially change their plans for college career after high school graduation.
But at this time, we don't know how many students we're talking about?
Because they're still working on, because we're still in term 4.
Okay. I didn't know if someone wasn't enrolled. Thank you for clarifying.
Ms. Mellencamp, could you give us the parameters just so I can have a better framework of what we're talking about? Is this a student that may be half credit shy? Where is the cutoff? Is a student that may be missing 3 credits? Are parameters in place where students would fall into this exception versus a student that would need to come back and complete?
So part of that process that I spoke of that Sue and I've met regularly with the principals at both of our high schools to closely monitor where students are at. Again, these students that we're talking about seeking waivers for are on track for graduation had we not been under COVID-19 and they've been able to complete their coursework that they were enrolled in for this school year. Those are the students that these waivers are intended for. It's not intended for a student who necessarily entered their senior year with maybe freshman credits. Does that help clarify? So under normal,
does.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. And I guess my final question is, will there be some sort of after action report? Because this may be helpful moving forward with these are the 16 kids that were impacted. These were the scenarios. So we have an idea of the scope of the exceptions that we're making.
That request could go to the superintendent for consideration and we could go from there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so this will kind of be a teaching tool for the board. We do have policy, and in extreme circumstances such as COVID-19, we can waive policy to allow the board to take action in a way that will help students. So it's a pretty common, or it's not a pretty common thing that we had to waive policy, but we do have that ability. So I didn't see any other questions or anything. Is there a motion?
Kyle, I move approval of waiving policy 345.6, Rule 1, specific graduation requirements for students for the 2019-2020 school year, only due to the COVID-19 public health emergency.
Is there a second?
This is Megan. I will second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to waive policy 345.6, Rule 1, specific graduation requirements for students for the 2019-2020 school year only due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Are there any other questions or discussion?
I would request that the motion be amended to specify that these are students that were previously on track for graduation, because as it is stated, it does not clarify who this waiver applies to.
This is Megan again. I would second that.
Okay, so let's work out the wording of that amendment really quickly. So the amendment could be perhaps as it applies to students who were on track to graduation prior to the pandemic.
School closures, yes.
So as applies to the seniors on track for graduation prior to school closure.
And instead of seniors, I would say students, because we could have some juniors who are eligible for early graduation.
Okay, so to students. Okay, so what I have for the amendment is as it applies to students on track for graduation prior to school closure. Okay, so we have a motion and a second for that amendment. Are there any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed to the amendment? Okay, so the amendment passes. So now we're going to vote on the amended motion, which is the waiving school policy 345.6 rule 1 specific graduation requirements as it applies to students on track for graduation prior to school closures for the 2019-2020 school year, only due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Is that the correct reading of the amended motion?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions or discussion about the amended motion? Michelle, do you have that, or do you need me to read it again?
Nope, I believe I have it.
All right. Okay, all in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion passes to waive policy 345.6 rule 1 specific graduation requirements as applies to students who are on track to graduation prior to school closure. Okay, awesome. Brings us to vehicle purchase.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, so this is Melissa Beavers. I also have on Stacy Duffy, who's our transition coordinator, and Wendy LaPointe will be helping support this as well. So we put together a proposal for a vehicle purchase to support our transition program. Transition services are offered to students with disabilities and their families to help them think about life after high school and identify some long-range goals, and then design specific experiences to help them meet those goals and gain the skills they need for life after high school. It's required as a part of the IEP for all students at the age of 14 to have a post-secondary transition plan. This transition plan must include measurable post-secondary goals for students based on age-appropriate transition assessments related to training, education, employment, and independent living skills if appropriate, and a description of transition services, including courses of study needed to assist the students in reaching their goals. Transition services can include many facets of planning for the future, such as employment, higher education and financial aid, legal and county resources, long-term care and service providers, military resources, 18 to 21 programs, support resources, and planning events in our area. So we specifically have an 18 to 21-year-old program in the school district of Beloit, and that program is in place because students with disabilities continue to have a right to a free and appropriate public education until they graduate with a regular diploma or until the age of 21. And so these individual students are over the typical graduation age of 18, but continue schooling or special education services for a period of time up to the year of maximum age, which is 21. Our 18 to 21-year-old program provides community-based instruction to students with disabilities based on students' individualized education program and post-secondary transition goals in the areas of vocational skills, daily living skills, recreation and leisure skills, transportation and mobility within the community, communication skills within the community, and self-advocacy and self-determination skills. So the biggest barrier that we run into within our transition program is transportation. We've had community conversations for multiple years, and our community stakeholders also say that our biggest barrier is transportation. So this year, Stacy Duffy, who's on the call, Stacy, you can chime in at any time if you want, did a lot of work and wrote a couple of secured a couple of grants for the district in order to purchase a vehicle. The purpose of the van really is to provide those services that are delineated in that post-secondary transition plan to improve post-secondary outcomes for our students with disabilities. So the van would provide transportation to community outings for students in the 18 to 21-year-old program. It would provide transportation to students with disabilities to college visits, for job shadows, to paid employment at times, for volunteer opportunities, and for students to participate in Project Search. Stacy did go out and get 3 bids. The bids were $47,626 from Bryden, $52,200 from Mid-State Truck Service, and $54,397 from Phil Long. Bryden Motors was the lowest local quote, and so that's what we went with. And like I said, the funding sources would be primarily grant funded. We have a total of $41,000 in grant funds, and then a small portion of money in our transition fund 21 that was raised by the students in that program, and then the remainder, about $2,600, would come through flow through. So we would see a cost savings because now we're buying bus passes and we're buying daily use tokens for students to get to and from some of these job shadows, volunteer opportunities. We are paying Durham for trips, and we've also contracted with Turner for transportation. The barrier that creates too is we are tied to the city bus schedule. So we're cutting into instructional time for these students if they're going to go to Black Hawk Tech and do a visit. If we had a van where we could transport them there and back, there would be a reduction in the amount of instructional time that the student would miss, but still be allowed that visit. Stacy or Wendy, do you guys have anything to add?
I think you did a great job of covering everything. I guess one final point would be that it would allow for individual transition services. As Melissa stated, the ability to take students out to meet with college advisors, be able to take them to a job shadow, and not be tied to the city bus schedule or be tied to planning field trips would allow for an increase in transition services.
Are there any questions?
Missy, great job. I think it's great that you've gone out and looked at grants for the funding for this. Question though, who's driving this van? Who's going to be the one driving it, and who's ensuring that?
Stacy, you can speak to who's driving it, and then I'll let Wendy and or Joanne talk about the insurance and maintenance.
Sure. So it would be School District of Beloit staff members. Currently, it would be the transition coordinator. It could potentially be School District of Beloit, the paraprofessionals who support the transition program. It could, so those would be the people driving the vehicle.
Is there any requirement? I'm assuming not, because it's a standard van. I mean, there's no driving requirement or license requirement for that?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I'm not sure if you guys are going to talk about, what other costs incur besides the price of the vehicle. Is there insurance or is there anything else like gas money? Where's that going to come from?
Wendy, can you help with that question? I think we discussed the maintenance of the vehicle will mirror, it kind of goes in with all the district vehicles. Can you speak to that?
Well, the insurance piece, the district would cover. As far as the maintenance, the vehicle will be under warranty for several years.
Mm-hmm.
And as far, go ahead.
This is Joanne, sorry. Yes, we're going to put this under the district umbrella contract. The insurance, when we have an employee driving the van, they will of course supply the district with a copy of their driver's license, but they're not driving their private vehicle. It would be a district vehicle. So with the transitions program being able to raise almost all of the funds for this vehicle, the district will bring on the insurance cost, which is anticipated to be less than $1,200 a year for that insurance cost. And as Wendy pointed out, the maintenance, it will be under warranty for its normal 3-year period. And then we have service contracts with local providers that do the maintenance on our other vehicles, that it's very competitive for what we're doing local business.
Another question, are there other districts in the area that have their own form of transportation like this? Or would we be the only one?
Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Janesville has vehicles that they use as well, don't they, for their transition program?
I don't know about Janesville, but I know the Turner School District has one. I know Fort Atkinson School District has one. There are several area districts that have them.
I can speak to, this is Peg, I can speak to Janesville that they do have vehicles that are in their fleet, not necessarily for a specific program, but are available for student transport.
Thanks.
And we have had vehicles we have, like Fred Atlas, the truancy, he has a van. We have had those types of vehicles occasionally that are not part of our Durham fleet that allow us to have an employee not be using their private vehicles.
I don't have a question, but Missy and team, I would just like to say great job. This seems wonderful, and I know our transition kids are so excited and proud that they put forth the effort to help raise the funds to make this happen. I'm super excited, and I would love to see something similar to this for like our McKinney-Vento students, our SAPAR students. So congratulations, and thank you for working on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. And some of those kids will overlap, Amy. So some of them may have benefit this as well.
Perfect.
Are there any other questions or comments or a motion?
I move that we approve the vehicle purchase for the transition program.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the vehicle purchase for the transition. Yes, John.
Do we need to amend that for the dollar amount involved?
I think that would be the best. Thank you, John.
Okay. So approve the purchase of the van for the transition program in the amount of $47,626.
Okay. All right. So is there a second for the amendment?
Second.
All right. So we have a motion, a second for the amendment, which is just adding in the amounts of $47,626. Any questions or discussion about the amendment? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the amendment passes. So now brings us back to the main motion, the amended motion to approve the purchase of a van for the transition program in the amount of $47,626. Any other questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. This is now going to bring us to Resolution 20-21.01, authorizing the board hearing officer and board expulsion officer to determine pupil expulsion under Wisconsin State Statutes 120.13, Parent 1, Parent E, 1 through 4, effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. And this is a resolution that came to, it was Oversight, correct, Amy, or was it Policy and Personnel?
Policy and Personnel.
Oh, Policy and Personnel, okay. And they recommend it for approval to the full board. And what this really does is in smaller districts, a school board will hear the expulsion themselves. So that means that anytime there was an expulsion, we would have to have a special board meeting with the 7 of us and hear the expulsion in closed session. And what this allows is for us to hire an attorney, Michael Holland, who represents the board in those matters and hears the expulsions for us, and then makes a recommendation to the board. And then our role in that is to either uphold his findings and his recommendations, we can modify them, or we can deny them. So like, for example, in June, we have 9 expulsion hearings coming up. An expulsion hearing can last anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes. So I've seen some that last an hour. So this is what the resolution allows us to do. Are there any questions?
Kyle, can you explain the rationale behind that for a larger district, just for, I guess, the public and for some of the newbies?
Sure. So for a larger district, that means, you know, if we look just at what's coming with us in June with 9 expulsions, that means that could be anywhere from like 4.5 hours of meetings only hearing expulsions to 9 hours of hearing expulsions. And it doesn't mean that we don't have access to the information. We'll learn more about it, but we are provided a video of the expulsion hearing as well as all of the documentation that they refer to, as well as it has the written order and recommendation. So we have all of that information when we come into a closed session for an expulsion. So we have all the information that we need, but it's really in a large district where we would be hearing more expulsion hearings. It's a time saver because obviously we all have, most of us have full-time jobs, and it's not feasible for us to meet. I mean, we've had, oh my gosh, I think there was one time like in January, February, we had like 11 expulsions at one meeting. So it allows us to review all of the information in the privacy of our own home and come to the board meeting ready to ask questions or to act on those expulsions.
Just for clarity, Kyle, can you give me a time frame of how far in advance we receive that documentation in order to prepare?
It is posted with the meeting. So under the executive session, which only the board members can see, it is the packet and then the link to the video. So for the ones for they're coming up June 2nd, those will be posted by Friday.
And you will definitely have them by Friday.
Yeah, and I will say, because of this world of technology, I don't necessarily know what that looks like, but mentors and mentees, I will ask you guys, mentors, to reach out to mentees and kind of go through that process. But So right now, kind of coming back to the resolution, that's why the resolution is important to us as a board and why we handle our expulsions in this fashion. Are there any other questions, discussion, or a motion?
Kyle, I move approval of resolution 2021.01 authorizing Mike Ulrich, attorney at law, and Michael Highland, attorney at law, as the board hearing officer / board expulsion officer, respectful or representative to determine pupil expulsion under Wisconsin substatute 120.13, parent 1, parent E 1-4, effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021.
I second that. This is Maria.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion, a second, to approve resolution 2021.01, authorizing Michael Ulrich, attorney at law, and Michael Holland, attorney at law, as the board hearing officer and board expulsion officer, respectively, to determine pupil expulsion under Wisconsin State Statute 120.13, parent 1, parent E, 1-4, effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Are there any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, Michelle, roll call, please.
Anderson.
Aye.
Delgado.
Aye.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Levy.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Wong.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, the motion carries. Brings us to short-term goals facilitator. So at our board retreat, we had our intention was to put together some short-term goals, and the board, at my request, decided and approved that we could look at using a third-party facilitator to help us create that list. So there are two options. One is WASB, and when I spoke with, I originally called Guy Levitt, and he suggested that because Dan is working with us so closely during the interim superintendent search, and then with the superintendent search, that he suggested that Dan would be the best person from WSB to work with in creating that short-term goals. So Dan sent. It's really kind of like it's a contract outlining what he would be able to do for us, as well as costs, and that does have he estimated to be about $1,500 with do not exceed of $2,000. The other option is from KCMG, and they were the couple who were working with the task force. They are very familiar with our data and have worked with the cabinet previously. So they also provided a proposal. Both parties were in the understanding that we had we kind of want to meet twice. Want to do this in two sessions, once in June with Sue and the cabinet, and then again in July or August with the new interim superintendent. And their estimate was at $8,500, but that includes 17 meeting events. Yes. Yes, and that that includes monitoring the plan also and not just creating it.
Kyle, may I ask a question?
Yes.
So I put some thought into this, and while I appreciate you bringing this forward, I was just thinking about the wonderful partnership that we've established with the city of Beloit, with Maria doing some translating for them, et cetera. And I'm wondering, would it be possible for us just to ask somebody from the city, perhaps like Lori Stotler, or just talk to Lori Luther and see if somebody from the city would be willing to facilitate for us? Because I feel like that's kind of a large expense just for short-term goals to get us through September.
We could, if that's what the board would wish for us to do. And this is a proposal. If we were interested in going with either WSB or KCMG, we could, we could say, well, that's more money than we want to spend. How can we, we were thinking, spending just, for example, like no more than $5,000. How can we even begin a negotiation process so that we can cap that out? So it's up to the board.
I'm going to second what Megan said. I thought when this was initially proposed, I thought we just needed someone to facilitate, just to have an opportunity for all the board members and the executive cabinet to participate in this. I think we have put some work and effort into having pretty much a lot of the data collected already. And I thought maybe it would be a good idea to move forward, but maybe have like a community member, someone from within the community that is knowledgeable of the community that can just help us facilitate, which I think it would really lower the cost. And just thinking forward of next year, not really knowing what the budget's going to look like. Like I said, I want to second what Megan said.
Kyle, everyone, is Stephanie. While I appreciate what Maria and Megan said, I'm just throwing this out there, and perhaps I'm wrong. But
hey, Stephanie, can I interrupt you for just 1 second? I'm sorry. So I'm sorry, Stephanie. Megan, was that like in a, because Maria said she seconded, I just want to make sure that there's not like a formal motion and a second on the table.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to make a motion. I guess I was just sort of, and I apologize for not, it just sort of came to mind, and I apologize for just dropping it in there like that. But no, just kind of throwing it out as an idea for the board to think about.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to just clarify that. Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, so now I'm a little confused. So are we just discussing it right now, or are we going to vote on this tonight, or?
You can take any action if there any action that you want, so we can discuss it. You can postpone it to another meeting if you would wish, with direction about gathering information, getting more information from someone or somewhere.
Okay. May I ask Megan a question?
Yeah.
Hey, Megan. So if we got someone from the community, would it be someone trained? Are you thinking of somebody trained in facilitating?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because in previous roles and in other boards I've served on, we've done things that are similar to this. And, there are a lot of people in the community, who are trained and who do this for their organizations already. And I just feel like whether it's with the city or with a community organization, this might be a nice opportunity to build a bridge and strengthen a relationship that the district has with an organization or with our municipality.
Okay. And maybe, forgive me for not knowing this, but when a person's trained in facilitating, that goes across all different, what's the term I'm looking for?
Genres.
Yes, thank you, Amy, for that. Yes. Are they trained in all different genres? Because education is such a unique little thing. The education world.
Kyle, could I share my impression?
Yeah, go ahead, Sue.
Thank you. Kyle asked me to sit in on the virtual conversation that he had with this couple. And I have to say a couple things that I feel like as a district, we're at a very critical juncture, not having a strategic plan that we typically would have in place and not having one that you feel is effective or viable to use at this time. And listening to this very impressive, very experienced team, I felt like they had a very good grasp on what the board expressed that they would like to have in place to get the district through this period of time. They seem to have, they immediately jumped on this and had a lot of ideas flying and said they definitely have a process. They had a name for this kind of process. They had a format to use. They expressed to us that they had done this type of activity before with other school districts and with other businesses. They remain a very neutral party and let the people participating use their experiences to develop this kind of a plan. They are experienced with schools, though, and they know what the format needs to be. So I just wanted to share that I think it's important to get this done very well by people who know exactly what they're doing and at a critical time in our district, and that I was very impressed with what they were able to just grasp in our conversation.
Cal, I have a couple questions for clarification. The first is KCMG. Is this the couple that was working with the previous superintendent to present the reconfiguration plans?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. For the record, I have zero comfort level with working with them. What I would like to see us do, I think, like Stephanie pointed out, education is very specific. Since we already have the relationship with Dan and WASB, I just want to make sure I had the correct number, the $2,000, not to exceed $2,000.
Right.
I would like for us meeting you, to go back to WASB and see if this can be built into the contract that we already have, because coming up with our short-term goals, I think, is a critical piece in how we're looking for our interim superintendent, and see if we can get that weaved into the process and hopefully at a lower cost. But just to reiterate, the KCMG, I have zero interest in using.
Okay. So it has to be two separate contracts with WASB because they're two separate services that we're using. So that's why it's a separate proposal that's not woven in. So WASB has different branches and different services. And so that's why it's coming as a separate proposal from WASB.
Okay, are you comfortable with going back to them and negotiating the price and maybe being very clear on specifically what services we want in facilitation? Because I think we have a pretty good grasp on what our short-term goals should be. We're not starting from scratch, that we just want an outside person to help us flush out the process.
So looking at the proposal, is there something specific from WASB? Okay.
What do you mean?
Is there, so looking at, I mean, is there a suggestion I should take back? I mean, just saying that, is there a suggestion about what you would want changed in that proposal to lower the cost? I mean, because if I go back and say, I'm thinking about the conversation I had with Dan and say, hey, the board is interested in working with you, but is there a way to make this less expensive? Is there, do you have a suggestion that I can pass along to him?
Okay, let me back up. Was the proposal from WASB included in our package for this evening?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It is called Beloit Org Contract.
Could you share your screen if you have it pulled up?
Sure. Let's see. Okay. Everybody see it okay?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the proposal.
Kyle, it's Stephanie.
Yeah.
Even with my readers on, I'm having a little trouble reading it. So
Are you able to bring up on board docs on your own? Let me see if I can make it bigger. Oh, here. Is that bigger? Is that make
better. Thank you. So the time, 170. Okay.
Oh.
Kyle, what do you have any idea what kind of a time frame we're looking at to get this done with the facilitator?
Yeah, I told them the board wanted one meeting in June to create a set of short-term goals that would be accomplished by September 1st. And then we would meet a second meeting with in either July or August, early August, to create a list of goals that would then carry us through like September 1st through the end of the school year.
So those
are district goals, kind of like
when we
plan.
So like when we say meetings, is that just unlimited time, or is there a time put on it? Or I'm just looking at the fees here per hour.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard. I would just imagine 3 or 4 hours, depending on what's available. I think if you try to sit in a room with each other too long after that, your brain kind of turns to mush when you're thinking about it. And we do have short-term goals that were submitted, but I think there is, we also, I think, need some support in determining the short-term and helping us distinguish between board goals, our board norms, and our district goals in a strategic plan.
Yeah, Megan, well, I like your idea of involving the community. I just feel pretty strongly that because education is such a unique thing that I feel we should stay with people who are well versed in education. And I do not mean that in any kind of detrimental way to any member of the community, of course, but just somebody who's made a career out of education.
Mm-hmm.
And really knows how to work specifically with a school board.
Kyle, thank you so much for sharing your screen. So what I would envision, if you're comfortable with your conversation with Dan and WASB, going something like, okay, here's the thing. These are the short-term goals that we've worked on so far as a board. We want you to come in and facilitate to help us see anything we're not seeing. I would envision those meetings being like in 3-hour chunks. So if we do 3 hours with the board and Sue, if we do 3 hours with the board and the new interim superintendent, 6 times the 175 of direct consultant work is 1,050. Now, if they do, let's say 2 hours of prep before our 3-hour meeting, and they do that twice, that would total us out at 1,570. So the other stuff, we're not going to have travel time. Some of the things, because of COVID, we're doing this virtually, is just not applicable. I would feel comfortable spending roughly the 1,570. And I think that still gives us a good amount of time to meet, and for them, a fair amount of time to prepare to meet with us, so our time is efficient.
Is that a motion, Amy?
Yes, that is a long-winded motion. Well, is there other discussion? I don't want to cut us off too soon and then have 4 amendments.
Amy, were you figuring in, I'm sorry, a total of 4 hours or 8 hours then?
So I did 3-hour session. So 1 3-hour session
Okay.
with the board and Sue, a second 3-hour session with the board and the new interim superintendent. And then on their end, 2 hours of the office consultant work. So I'm thinking they have done this before. I don't think we're that unique, for lack of a better word, that it would take them more than 2 hours of prep to meet with us and make our time efficient.
Okay. Yes, I agree.
Okay. Can I stop sharing my screen? Or does anybody still need it?
I'm good.
Okay.
Kyle, I had a question or a comment. I mean, the idea of going, well, first of all, in all clarity, and I'm not going to pick a side on this one or the other, but having sat through the presentations and the reconfiguration stuff and talking to the individuals involved in that, because I had some discussions with them when I believe I was at the WSB conference, they came in with, unfortunately, the table was set for them and they didn't really get a chance to do what they truly do well. So in defense of their movement and what they did, I don't think it was a fair representation in that circumstance. Having talked to them, having been part of the process myself, and I thought they did a good job. But that's neither here nor there. Now, the second part of it, though, Megan's idea, I don't think it's completely out of bounds, especially if we're going to go back to WASB and ask them if, what they're going to do, depending upon the terms. But is there somebody within the area that has done some training with education, and maybe we don't know that at this point? But I understand and respect the fact that, education is a specific genre that we want to be careful about getting anybody to come in and do some training for us or some goal setting. So just comments out there. I guess willing to do whatever the board is at this point. It's not a huge dollar amount, fortunately. If we go with WASB, it's $1,500 is probably what we're talking about. Hopefully they can come in at that level. So just my comments.
Okay. I kind of agree with what John said, that knowing education and kind of being able to balance business and education together, and they've dug really deep into our data with the cabinet. And again, I was impressed by the presentations to the board. And I know that like the 8,500 is a lot of money. I can go back and say, listen, the board is only comfortable at whatever amount the board says, and we need to come up with some sort of plan. I can go back and say exactly what we're looking at 2-3 hour set. The board's really only interested in 2 3-hour meetings and some prep time. So, we have the ability and flexibility to negotiate with either group. I've worked with Dan a little bit closely with the interim superintendent search and asking questions, and he's a very nice guy. And WASB is really kind of a strategic plan, or a tactical plan, or whatever you're going to call it for this year, has to be really brought together by administration, the administration team, and the board. And WASB is really the organization supports the school board. So my concern with WASB then is administration going to have their fair say and input about that strategic plan, or that plan for this next school year? So I'm willing to continue discussion or entertain any motions that anybody would like to throw out there.
Kyle, the other group, the acronym, whatever it is,
yeah,
they're looking at that's going well into the next year, though, isn't it? That's almost taking us right up, or even to and through the strategic plan. 17 meetings. That's an abundant amount of meetings.
It is, and we could say we're not interested in, we're not interested in that many meetings. so we can say specifically, hey, the board is, that's a lot of money. We're not really willing to spend that. But here's the feedback I have. So a motion to go with WASB or KCGM, it sounds like would really be go back and negotiate and say, this is what we're really interested in. This is what we need, and make that happen.
If I may, Mr. President.
Yeah.
I was just looking at to answer John's question a little bit more, I was looking at their proposal. And if you look at Article 3 under compensation and look at 3.2, they're talking about payments being made quarterly. And I believe my understanding from looking at this would be that that first payment is due in August. And I think that would cover your first part. You'd have to clarify it with them, but it looks like the first part of the work, which would be the part to get you through those initial goals through September, would come with that payment in August. That would be your first 2-3 hour meeting type thing. That was Amy's proposal of, meeting with the board and Sue and then the board and the administration. And they're saying that first payment would be $21.25. So that's a little more comparable. I mean, I would still say if that's something the board's interested in, you'd want to clarify that with them. And John was right. Then the next step was to do a bigger plan for the next school year and then to do a strategic plan. So they had 3 parts to their proposal, whereas WASB only quoted doing those initial few goals to get you through September and not to get you through the next school year at all.
What I would like to point out is, Kyle, I appreciate your comment about representation in the planning, but this isn't the district plan that administration would take the lead on. This is the board plan. And one of the things I distinctly remember about KCMG is the comment being made at one of the meetings of, and I'm paraphrasing, I want to be clear about that, if you don't think this will work, you tell us how it'll work, which I think was very inappropriate for a consultant to take that stand with the attendees at the meeting. And the point that this is the board's plan and then the district has a separate plan, even though it goes together, I am completely comfortable with using WASB. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel and explain our needs. And probably for the final time this evening, I will just say I have zero interest in using KCMG.
So this plan is not a board plan. It's not a plan that the board creates for the district, because that's a top-down approach. In order for the plan to be successful, the board has to create the plan in conjunction, in cooperation with administration and the cabinet, because we both have to agree on that plan. The board will approve it as a plan for the summer and then for the 2021 school year, but then is up to administration to carry it out. And they have to have input on how to carry it out, because they're going to be the ones who are actually doing it. And then, reporting back to the board on progress.
Aren't these short-term board goals?
No, we've created our board goals.
Okay, so why does it say short-term goals facilitator?
Because we're creating short-term district goals. That was my interpretation of what the board was telling me, that the board wanted to create short-term district goals for the summer and to really kind of addressing the pandemic and the reopening of schools and what that looks like. And then create a second list of goals, or a continuation of goals in beginning September 1st. That would carry us through the 2021 school year.
Kyle, that was my understanding as well through the previous retreat that we had, that we were all kind of stumbling around, knowing that without a superintendent in place, or an interim at this point, we have Sue here, but knowing that we have a transition point and knowing that we have a period of time, even till a permanent superintendent would come into place, we need, and with no strategic plan in place, we need to have some guidance here to help our district to go through the next year in a very smooth fashion, and that the district as a whole, staff, administration, parents, everybody knows what the goals and objectives are.
Hey, so just jumping in real quick, it sounds like when we talked about this issue previously, we talked about how important it was to have our interim superintendent or superintendent involved in the strategic planning process. So I'm reluctant to go beyond just like the 2 sessions that you just talked about, which is why I'm inclined to go with WASB, since it would just be these 2 meetings. And then once we get our interim onboarded and decide how we're going to proceed with our strategic plan, that person then can have full input into the process. And I feel like if we go with this other group with these 17 meetings and their RFP, that their proposal that they gave us, it feels like they're like already setting up for the strategic plan, which I feel like that's just not the right message that we want to give right now. Like, this is exactly like Kyle, you explained it really well. Like, let's just get us situated well for right now. Let's get somebody in the seat and like, let's let that person have like full buy-in. Cause I feel like if I'm the new person and I come in and I'm like, oh, you guys already have this already. I don't know. Like, let's let that person have some autonomy and input into that decision. So anyway, I support the WASB choice.
Okay. Any other discussion, motions? Spencer, you unmuted?
Yeah, though, one thing I was kind of wondering about, so like, if we go back and we kind of, we ask them about how we can get the prices reduced at all or figure out the costs to get lowered, could we take that time also to see if like the city has any kind of input that they want to provide? Because like, it'd be good to get like us to kind of start building a strong bridge between the school district and the actual city, like council itself, just so that we have that discussion going back and forth. So we're just not like operating in our own little bubble.
I will do whatever the board says to do. So if that's included in the motion, that you want to talk, you want to try to get the cost lowered, and then in the meantime, work with the city. My thought on that then is that we're kind of negotiating with WSB or KCGM, and then we're also still talking to the city. So then we're negotiating, and so then we maybe negotiate and then ends up not knowing.
Kyle?
Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Can we just, right now, everybody, can we just focus on just the summer? I mean, if I'm understanding it correctly, we've got as you said, we've got the next 3 months, June, July, August, September, to get 3 to 4 months to get things ready. I mean, from the pandemic, I guess I'm thinking that we just right now, I love the idea of getting the city involved more, but I think that's for long term. And right now, I think we should just focus on the short term and just go with Dan, if he would continue to help us at WASB just to get the next 3 months ironed out.
Okay.
We got a lot on the plate. We got the interim and we've got that, and we're working really hard as a new board, doing webinars and book studies, which I think is phenomenal. But I think we should just focus right now on those few things and get that done. So I guess saying that, I'll make a motion and see what you all think. I make a motion that we go with Dan at WASB to be a facilitator for the 2 meetings. Oh boy. Help me out, Carol. Can
you hang on 1 second, Stephanie?
Yeah.
I just want to get clarification so we don't have to do
an amendment.
So with this, Michelle, would this actually be like like approving the contract, right? Because this is an actual contract.
I would say yes. If we move forward with this, with her making a motion to go with WASB to facilitate short-term goal setting with the board, I would say you're approving that contract that's attached.
That's the way I would take that motion. And I saw John's question pop up. That was kind of my question too, because it looks like at the bottom of the contract, like Guy is going to be the one facilitating it instead of Dan. And that was confusing to me on that contract.
And I don't know, did they not, because when I spoke to Guy and he said that it would be Dan. So that's something I would have to clarify.
So it sounds like the next step, instead of having a motion, or have a motion pending clarification. And it sounds like what our preference is to have Dan as our facilitator, but not to exceed, say, approximately 1,600. And the conversation you could have with him would be to ask, is it reasonable to efficiently work this process with 2 3-hour meetings and 2 2-hour prep times for them leading up to the meeting?
I would agree with that. And then I don't even know that we need to make a motion, that Kyle, you could just go and you could just make that call.
But I think the motion would be to go into the contract if this criteria is met.
Oh.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
I did look at it again, and I believe that what that is saying about Guy Levitt is that he is the WASB coordinator of organizational and search services. So he would be signing off on the contract along with the school district, not that he's the facilitator.
Okay.
He's signing it on behalf of WASB as the coordinator for these type of services.
Okay.
Well, wasn't there the conversation that with Dan's schedule and all of that Guy would be doing the facilitating? I could have swore I heard that earlier.
No, Guy, I spoke to Guy originally when I called WASB, and he said that because Dan is working so closely with the district on our interim search and has a relationship with the board, that he felt that Dan would be the person from WASB who should head that up. So I think that we can't negotiate a contract in a board meeting because WASB is not here, and we can't approve it pending if they say yes, then we'll approve it. So I think the motion would have to direct me to go back to WSB and say, with that specific criteria that was mentioned, the 2 3-hour meetings, 2 2-hour prep times, which would bring us up to like about 1,570. And then I would do that and then bring back another contract at our next meeting, which would be the 9th for sure.
I know you wanted to avoid open session because the majority of our work on Thursday would be closed, but if this could be ironed out by Thursday, would it be worth going into open session to take a vote so we can move forward?
We would have to double check with Dean and staff and make sure that would be okay if we did it early first and then went into closed session immediately following, and then they could end the recording and go home.
And then get it posted as well.
Yeah. Okay. Dean said he's okay with it. So any discussion, questions, or motions?
I move that our board president pursues amending the contract with WASB to include 2 3-hour sessions and 2 2-hour prep periods for WASB, not to exceed $1,600.
I second.
Can you say that one more time, Amy?
I will do my best. I move that our board president works with WASB to amend the contract to include 2 3-hour sessions with the board and 2 2-hour prep times prior to each session for an amount not to exceed $1,600.
One clarification, did you say 2 2-hour prep periods or 2 1-hour prep periods?
2 2-hour prep periods.
Thank you.
And 2 3-hour sessions.
Yep, got that. Thank you.
And I seconded, Stephanie.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to directing me to reach out to WSB and ask the specific contract for 2 3-hour meetings and 2 2-hour prep periods with a do not exceed amount of $1,600. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right. So I will do that and hopefully have something ready for us. Okay. Brings us to the board evaluation tool. So our board calendar says that we will select an evaluation tool. So last year we used, and this was the first time we'd used it, was the school perception survey by WASB. And this one is included in the price of our membership. I believe that's what they said during our workshop. Is that correct, Michelle?
I believe so. The only time there would be extra expense is for an additional $250. School perceptions would do further disaggregation, but for the included cost, we can do our own disaggregation, which is what I did last year.
Okay, thank you. So we did that one for the first time last year, right before the new board members got on. However, the previous year, we used just our board goals to evaluate ourselves. So the school perceptions are attached, as well as the board evaluations, kind of like those are examples. They're not our goals, but it's to kind of show what it would look like. There is a spot to rank the goal, and this is something we would decide. We found it difficult to like score the goal itself. And so after we completed it, the discussion was that if we did it again that way, that we wouldn't score the goal itself, we would score the action steps underneath the goal. So our calendar does say, how it works with the board evaluation to of our goals is that we would complete that on our own. And then bring it, either send the results to Michelle or we would have that ready for us at our meeting, and then rate ourselves. Now we should, even if we do school perceptions, just like with any goal or plan, we should evaluate it. So I would envision that we would still use the board evaluation of the goals. And then that school perception survey could be an added layer if we chose to do it.
Hey, just jumping in. I think that's a great idea. I think we need to be accountable to our own goals. And I like how you described how we would be able to, just to ensure that there are metrics, just to weigh in on each of those subpoints underneath each goal. But what I found useful about the WASB one, especially if there's no additional costs that we're incurring on it, is I felt like it prompted me to think differently and from different kind of like expand my mind about what more we can be doing to be more effective as a board. Mm-hmm. So I would be in favor of doing both. Okay. I'm not sure how that falls on the calendar, if we could just maybe do them in tandem or if it's like one week, one the other week. But I do think that it's important for us to be accountable to our own goals.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would love to make a motion that we adopt on our calendar to use our own board evaluation tool so that we can be accountable to the board goals that we created, as well as use the WASB service as long as there's no additional charge.
I second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, which would define our board evaluation as evaluating our goals, as well as using the school perception survey through WASB, as long as there is no extra charge. Any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so we have adopted the school perceptions and our own evaluation tool, and those will be completed end of March, beginning of April. Okay, brings us to Robert's rules. It's rules, not rubles. Webinar approval. So WSB has like a webinar. It's not a scheduled workshop like the last two we've participated in. This is a pre-recorded one so that each board member could watch it at a convenient time. It's $45 per board member. I suggested this because it might be a good way to kind of go through Robert's Rules of Order. It's a couple years ago, I think we did have a workshop. Robert's Rules of Order is really dry. The workshop was okay, that someone from the community had done for us. But I think this would provide a good foundational knowledge. And then Robert's Rules is kind of like one of those things that you learn as you go and as situations come up. That's how you learn. So I put this on here as a tool that if the board chose, we would pay the $45 for each board member, or if they have a discounted fee, if the entire board does it. But then it's not something where we'd all have to log on at 7 p.m. on a day. We could say, let's, by the end of June, everybody do this webinar, because you can do it at your convenience. So any questions or anything?
Yeah,
Kyle,
I would love it.
Okay.
Kyle, I was at the meeting when we had Bonnie Wetter do it locally, and while it was fine, obviously in today's world that's not going to work well. So,
Yeah.
And WASB, I think, has done a fantastic job. I think their presentations are good. I think their presenters are very good. They have the backup material as well that you can go back and refer to. So yeah, I would be all for that.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to pursue the WASB Robert's Rule webinar.
Okay. And can we add a friendly amendment that it's $45 per person?
With the $45 cost per person.
Yes, thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the to approve the WSB Robert's Rules webinar through WSB at the expense of $45 per person. Are there any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. So we will get Ray signed up and let you know the information. Which brings us, yes.
That's just my clarification. Am I trying to sign everybody up? Was everybody interested? I wasn't quite clear on that. So do I want to seek out a group rate and then just let them know that everybody will be participating at their own time? Or are people going to email me with their interest? Or how am I going to know who wants to?
My interpretation that everyone was going to take part.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, it brings us to meeting closing. Looks like we have completed all the business on the agenda for today. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a great meeting and great work. We will talk to you all on Thursday.
Who seconded?
Oh, it was Amy, I believe.
Okay. And Stephanie was the primary, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.